Thank you. We now turn to our debate on motion 23815 in the name of the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon on trade and cooperation agreement between the United Kingdom and the European Union. Could I invite all members who wish to contribute to this debate to press their request to speak buttons, and I call on the First Minister Nicola Sturgeon to speak to and to move the motion.
Thank you, Presiding Officer. Today, the SNP and I hope Parliament will vote on principle. We will vote against a rotten Brexit that Scotland has rejected all along, and will say no to a hard Brexit deal that damages our economy, our society and the opportunities of this and future generations. I'll say more on that shortly, but first let me issue a challenge to Tory MSPs who say we should be backing this deal. If you support this deal, then set out for us today, in clear and simple terms, what the benefits of it to Scotland actually are. And then tell us how it comes close, even close, to honouring Scotland's choices. Now, my prediction is that the Tories will do none of that today, because quite simply, they can't. Far from respecting Scotland's democratic wishes, this deal rides roughshod over them. And compared to EU membership, it has no benefits, only massive downsides. And to the eternal shame of the Tories, it even betrays wholesale the promises made to Scotland's fishermen. So bereft of any positive case, what we'll hear instead today is desperate diversionary nonsense. They'll say that we have to back this deal, not because it's any good, Presiding Officer, but because the alternative is worse. That, frankly, is an insult to Scotland's intelligence. It's legally suspect for a start, but more to the point, as we will see very shortly, this deal will pass regardless of how Scotland's MPs vote, because that's what the Westminster establishment has decided. The fact is, Scotland's voice has been ignored on Brexit all along, every single step of the way. But you know, the real disgrace of the Tory position is the notion that lies at the heart of it, that the best Scotland can ever hope for is a choice between a terrible outcome and an even worse outcome. Well, the bad news for them is that, just like Brexit itself, that's a notion people in Scotland are increasingly rejecting. More and more people are realising that we can do better. We do not have to accept whatever dismal future Tories decide to foist upon us. We can choose our own future instead. It is time, Mr Rumbles, for Scotland to get the best possible deal, and that's a future as an independent European nation.
Mike Rumbles.
I believe, like the First Minister, that ending a political and economic union of some 48 years will be poorer for us in Scotland. But, well, it will be poorer for us. Do you not realise that? But does she not understand? Can the First Minister not see that the same argument she uses stands, the very same arguments stand for ending a 300-year-old economic and political union?
First Minister.
The European Union is made up of independent nations, and the dismal Liberal position is this: they know how damaging, how devastating Brexit is for Scotland, but they think we should just have to put up with it rather than choose a better future for ourselves. Well, we have no truck with that. Scotland can, should aspire to be an equal, independent country, and that is what Scotland is on the path to becoming. Presiding Officer, 62% of people in Scotland voted to stay in the European Union. In not one but two subsequent UK general elections, pro-EU parties got an overwhelming majority of votes in Scotland. And these votes reflect the economic and practical benefits that EU membership has brought to our country. But they also reflect something more fundamental. People in Scotland, by and large, and for all its imperfections, support what the EU represents. Its fundamental principle that independent nations should share sovereignty for the common good is one that most people support. Its values, democracy, equality, solidarity, the rule of law, respect for human rights, are ones we share. And throughout this whole Brexit process, we have all seen, and I suspect most people will long remember, the stark contrast between the EU's solidarity with Ireland and the UK government's utter contempt for Scotland and her people. The fact is, there is no Brexit settlement that would ever fulfil the wishes of people in Scotland. But there were outcomes that would have protected our interests better than this one. Back in December 2016, the Scottish Government published a plan for compromise. We recognised, reluctantly, that the UK would leave the EU, but proposed staying in the single market and customs union. It was the obvious compromise position, but the UK Government dismissed it out of hand. They disregarded Scotland's views, values and interests. And now they have agreed a deal that is disastrous for Scotland. A deal that puts barriers in the way of Scotland's exports. You know, the Tories are trumpeting, pun intended, the fact that this deal delivers zero tariffs, as if we're all meant to suddenly forget that there were already no tariffs. But now, to avoid tariffs in the future, businesses will need to meet a whole host of complex regulatory requirements. The estimated cost of all of that to business in the UK is £7 billion every year. Service providers could now face different restrictions in each EU country. The finance sector, almost 10% of Scotland's economy, is still completely in the dark about what will replace the all-important passport. Ordinary people will pay a price even for simple family holidays. New health insurance requirements, roaming charges for mobile phones, more time-consuming queues at airports. There are consequences too for our justice system. Our police will no longer have real-time, immediate access to alerts from EU partners on wanted or missing persons. And as well as making us less safe, this deal also makes us less free. The right to work, study and live across an entire continent is being taken away. And it will also be far more difficult for us to attract workers from other EU countries. One of our key challenges as a country, an ageing and potentially shrinking population, has just been made even worse. These costs, these harms, for that is what they are real, and they start taking effect in just 2 days' time. They will cost jobs and they will reduce prosperity in Scotland. And the benefits, well, perhaps I'll get some of the benefits in a moment.
Dean Lockhart.
Well, from tomorrow, we'll be able to enter into free trade agreements with countries across the rest of the world. And over the past 15 years, the SNP has voted against every free trade agreement that it's voted on, including free trade agreements with Singapore, with Canada and Japan. So if you're so concerned about free trade, why did the SNP vote against all of those free trade agreements?
First Minister.
None of these free trade agreements will make up for membership of the world's biggest single market that in 2 days' time we get ripped out of against our will. The member has just helpfully demonstrated that the benefits in return for all of this harm being imposed on us are pretty much non-existent. Even fishing, the one sector that did expect benefits from Brexit, has been comprehensively let down. The Tory fishing promises were never deliverable. Many of us pointed that out, but they were made and the industry had a right to rely on them. Every single one of them have been broken. Douglas Ross, Alistair Jack, every Scottish Tory MP said in writing that the UK and Scotland must have complete control and full sovereignty over waters. They said that tying fisheries access to a trade deal was a red line that must not be crossed. If it was, they said, the UK would be leaving the common fisheries policy, I quote, in name only, and that in their words, not mine, that would be a betrayal of Scotland. Well, that betrayal is there for all to see in this deal. A long-term arrangement guaranteeing EU boats access to UK waters, access and quota shares included in the future economic partnership, access to waters not just tied to the overall trade deal, hardwired into it. Every single Tory promise to Scotland's fishermen broken, every Tory red line crossed. But you know, it's even worse than that. I think it's better the Tories listen to the reality of their sellout of fishing. The key whitefish stocks that so much of the Scottish industry depends on, for them there will be fewer fishing opportunities for Scotland under this deal than under the common fisheries policy. Presiding Officer, this must be the worst negotiating outcome in history. A hard Brexit for Scotland and a comprehensive sellout of the Scottish fishing industry. That's why the verdicts of fishermen themselves are so damning. The National Federation of Fishermen's Organisations, fishing has been sacrificed. The Scottish Whitefish Producers Association, deeply aggrieved. The Scottish Fishermen's Federation, the deal does not restore sovereign UK control over fisheries. The UK is, I quote them, now a coastal state with one hand tied behind our back. Utterly damning, but utterly justified. The fishing industry, misled by the Tories, sold out by the Tories all over again. Betrayed by the Tories on the way into the EU, betrayed by the Tories on the way out. And it's part of a pattern. Not that long ago, Ruth Davidson made it known that she would resign rather than support a differential deal for Northern Ireland. It's amazing what the offer of a place in the House of Lords can do to the merest whiff of a Ruth Davidson principle. Adam Tompkins, I'm not sure if he's here, went even further. No unionist, he said, could ever endorse any sort of differentiated deal for Northern Ireland, but that's what this deal delivers. A hard Brexit for Scotland and a special single market deal for Northern Ireland. They're even dragging us out of Erasmus, a truly wonderful horizon-expanding scheme that gives young people opportunities to live and study across Europe. And again, the Tories here told us that wouldn't happen. Erasmus is something which all parties agree must continue post-Brexit. The words of Jackson Carlaw. But the UK government has now turned its back on Erasmus and sold out our young people as well. And Jackson Carlaw, not a peep. I can only assume that his ermine cloak is in the post. Presiding officer, what is now very clear is this. The Scottish Tories are ignored by their Westminster bosses, just like Scotland as a whole is. But they lack the gumption or the self-respect to do anything about it. They are Boris Johnson's mouthpiece. They will abandon any principle, break any promise, sell out any sector if Westminster and Boris Johnson tell them to. Today is conclusive proof of that. By contrast, and in conclusion, presiding officer, the SNP today will stick by our principles, by our values and by our beliefs. And most importantly, we will stick by the people of Scotland who have opposed Brexit at every turn. We will not play the Westminster game. We refuse to be complicit in a Boris Johnson-imposed democratic, social and economic calamity for Scotland. The people of Scotland have been ignored throughout this whole fiasco, our views disregarded, our Parliament treated with contempt. For Scotland, we now know beyond doubt that the Westminster system is broken beyond repair. We deserve better than a dismal choice between a terrible deal and no deal. We deserve the right to choose the best deal of all, a future as an independent European country. It is only through independence that we will ever get to choose the future we want. Independence, that is the deal that so many people in Scotland now do want, and we will have the right to choose it. I move the motion in my name.